Let me know, guys, if you are here with me. In 25 minutes we'll be joining our friend Kamryn and we'll be having the interview, long-awaited interview. We'll be having the opportunity to ask about the progress, how to learn chess, how to get rid of the obstacles, how to get better when there is no everything that is going right, how to persevere. Therefore, I hope you like it. Today we have Saturday, 6th of May. This is the description about Kamryn, her channel and her Twitter. At the same time you can see her smiling because she knows that she will have the chance to tell us about her journey, about her creating content, teaching others, being in a chess club, playing over the board games. Therefore, it's going to be really interesting. Kamryn recently is 2000 rated, if I'm not mistaken, because she got into 2000 probably 2 or 3 months ago, and I guess it will be either 2000, either maybe a little bit more. 2000 chesscom, therefore a little bit of difference because chesscom and lichess are a little bit other systems. But anyway, she's very competent player, to say the least, very competent player. Therefore, in going to 2000 rating in 2 years is not that easy. And I'll just check out quickly what is her rating right now. Small Town Goose. At chesscom, quickly check out what is her rating because I am pretty interested as well. Rapid rating, she is 2017 right now. Maybe I'll just show in this on the screen. Small Town Goose, the nickname Kamryn, therefore it's her. 2017, the rating at this moment. At all time, if we just click all time, you can see that she started about 1000, she dropped up to the lowest was 750. Take notice that at chesscom you can set up your initial rating because there is 4 options that you click, and whatever the options you click, the rating can change. Therefore, it's not zero, absolute zero, but rather the, let's say, subjective. And now she got on the 5th, on the May 26, 2021, and now as you can see, she got into 2000 right here on the 90, on the February 22nd. Can you see that? 2000. And take notice that she's very competent player because she can beat 99.8 players on the server. Therefore, it's a very impressive. And to be honest, if you would like to know how good she is, at least from the rating, if I played her at chesscom, if we played, let's say, 20 games 3+0, I would need to focus very much to beat her, to outplay her. I am 2150 or 2120 depending on the ratings, but I would need to work very hard. And the longer time control would be, and with that time increment, the less chance I would have to beat her. Of course, I am more experienced, therefore it is one thing, but take notice that being 2000 at chesscom, if it is a legit rating and her rating is legit, is pretty much impressive. Very impressive. And as you can see, she plays a little bit less regularly, at least the rapid games, but maybe she plays different type of games, maybe she's more focused about the content. We'll ask her in a moment. And now quickly about Kamryn. Kamryn is a 23-year-old chess player from North Dakota, United States. She learned how to play chess in early 2021, mostly inspired by the Chess Queen's Gambit series on Netflix, and achieved a rating of 2000 in chesscom Rapid Time Control about 2 years later. Kamryn is involved in her local chess community, competing over-the-board tournaments, running a children's chess club, assisting with scholastic tournaments, and occasionally coaching beginner cats. She runs a YouTube channel where she posts content about her journey in chess, plus educational videos aimed at the beginner and intermediate players. And here we have You can subscribe to her channel at YouTube and follow her at Twitch if you wish. Therefore, if you would like to have the contact with her about her activity, there it is. There is the photo of Kamryn. And this is the viral video how she accidentally went from 0 to 2000 in 2 years at chess. Therefore, you can watch it if you wish as well. And this is the rating progress of Kamryn from 700 to 2000 in chesscom in just 2 years. Therefore, I guess pretty impressive. And therefore, we'll be having all of the questions related to the chess, to grinding, to clubs, to over the board game, teaching, coaching, overcoming the obstacles. There are a lot of stuff that we'll be talking about, and I guess it will be pretty fine. What about that? Ready for the interview? Okay, guys, I'll be popping up in a moment. Hello guys, welcome to the stream everybody. We have the special guest, as I just mentioned many times, that will be looking for a special guest as always. And this is the special guest because recently Kamryn just created the video about her journey, how she got from 0 to 2000 in just 2 years. And this is a pretty spectacular because some of my audience asked me, is it pretty impressive or not? And I just told them that going to 2000 is something like at the server, at chesscom server, beating in a at least statistical way 99.6 or 99.8 players. Therefore, it must be impressive, right? At least from statistical standpoint. But all of the other questions will be pop up in a moment. But before that, I would like you to invite you to our community. Thank you very much for accepting the invitation. How are you, Kamryn?
I'm great. I'm so happy to be here. How are you?
I'm fine. I was happy very much because I just make a little bit of promotion of yours with your help. You just put us, let's say, great photos and a little bit of description about yourself. That description I'll just in a moment read, let's say, slowly. And at the same time, they were pretty much impressed how you did that, such a progress in such a short span. And therefore, we'll try to address this topic. At the same time, you are the over the board player and all of the organizer, all of the, let's say, activity at chess community. Therefore, it would be even more impressive because this way you can just help us as the community to understand how you can combine all of these activities. What about that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, therefore, let me to introduce you very briefly about the stuff that you, let's say, sent me that was very coherent. Therefore, I thank you very much for very professional approach. And guys, a little bit of info about Kamryn, our guest today. Kamryn is a 23-year-old chess player from North Dakota, United States. She learned how to play chess in early 2021, mostly inspired by the Queen's Gambit series on Netflix, and achieved a rating of 2000 in chesscom Rapid Time Control about 2 years later. Kamryn is involved in her local chess community, competing in over-the-board tournaments, running a children's chess club, assisting with scholastic tournaments, and occasionally coaching beginner cats. She runs a YouTube chess channel where she posts content about her journey in chess, plus educational videos aimed at the beginner and intermediate players. And in the meantime, because before I forget, because sometimes we have very intense, let's say, interviews, I'll be posting once in a while, guys, the info about Kamryn's access. I mean, some like YouTube and social links. Therefore, if you'd like to support her at YouTube or at Twitter, feel free to do so. Okay. From my side, enough. Now let's get into the topic. If you can get us a little bit of insight how you get into the community, when you started, and what happened that you are with us in the community from now on, I'll be super happy.
Sure. So yeah, I started, like I think a lot of people, there's a bit of a chess boom after the Netflix series, The Queen's Gambit came out. I love the beautiful cinematography, but I was also just very drawn to the chess, and I wanted to understand like what was going on the screen. And so was kind of what kickstarted me into joining the chess community. So I didn't play chess in school. I didn't even know how the pieces moved at that point, and that was, like I said, about 2 years ago. So I started in whenever that was, early 2021, and I got onto chess.com shortly after. And about a year after I started like learning how to play, I got involved in my local chess community. I attended our local club, and then I quickly got involved in some like children's activities. So I was in I started a kids chess club at our library, and then I was also doing some like substitute coaching, which I still continue to do. And then I'm also helping out with running some Scholastic tournaments, as well as playing in tournaments myself. I'm no longer Scholastic, of course, but I have been working a lot on my over the board stuff as well, and yeah, competing in local tournaments too. And then yeah, in about a couple months, when was it? February of this year is when I finally reached the 2000 rating.
If I'm not mistaken, it was 22nd February, because we checked out previously, just 10 or 15 minutes ago, if one of our viewers asked about your, let's say, progress, I just look at your account and just mentioned about the reaching the 2000. Excellent.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yes, and excellent. And what about, let's say, collaborating with, let's say, clubs, collaborating with coaches, with the librarians, all of the people who are something like making activities for children, for youngsters, for teenagers. What about this one? How you get into this type of activity? Because probably everybody knows that you can just, let's say, watch various type of, let's say, series. You can just have the YouTube videos. You can do anything, but you are just getting into supporting others, if I understood correctly.
Yeah, so when I first started going to my local club, it's pretty small. It's at like a smaller mall in my city. And I happened the first time to sit down with the president of our state's chess association. His name's Todd Wolf, and he also just won for the third time our state competition, and so he's a very strong player. And so he's the one who really got me involved in the community. I would definitely say he's been my contact point on almost everything. He's known in our state of North Dakota as the chess guy, and so he travels around all over the state and gives like clinics at different schools and like elementary schools, and runs tournaments in different smaller cities, and just super involved in the community. So he's the one who suggested that I go into the library and talk to them and see if I could get a kids chess club started off just for free. And so that's been an ongoing thing for about a year now. And then he's also the one who he does individual coaching with the kids. And so when he's out of town running clinics or whatever, then that's when I often am called to step in and help out with the younger kids. As far as my own coaching, I haven't really had any formal coaching, but I've actually learned a lot from being able to be involved in our over-the-board community. And so like those are really strong players. They've been playing for a long time. And so to be able to play a game with somebody and then sit and talk about it afterwards, I found that is super helpful, and that's really helped my chess improvement a lot.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. And now if I ask the question that is probably a little bit silly from some standpoint, but for our community it's super important because everybody has his or her own reasons. What does chess attract to you, and why do you not play video games or online games but chess? I mean chess in the sense that you grind down up to 2000. It must be a little bit of, I would say, healthy addiction and perseverance. Otherwise you will be able to do so, at least at this short span. What about that?
Yeah, it was absolutely an addiction. And I think when I first started off, it did seem just kind of like another video game. You know, as a kid, you know, I had my little Nintendo DS and I would play Mario games. You know, I did play video games. I do like them. But yeah, chess quickly became something a little bit more than that. And I've always had a really hard time putting into words what exactly it is about chess that, you know, attracted me to the game and to like put in all this effort. And what it really comes down to, I think, is just people talk about being bit by the chess bug. And I think that absolutely happened for me. You know, I found it pretty interesting just to start off, just how like simple the game was once you learn how all the pieces move and everything, but also just the very deep complexity and the history that, you know, all of these great players have put into the work that they've put into the game and advancing it to where it is today. And then also how much more theoretically there is to discover about the game just as a whole. I think that just the depth of that like information was really interesting to me, just diving in, that there's just so much to learn. And I think especially when I was coming out of school, I was kind of searching for something to latch onto that wasn't like my homework. And so it turned a little bit into homework for me, but it was really fun homework. So
yeah, got it. And if I may ask about the stuff that makes chess that much attractive, many times players mentions that there is some like logic, some like harmony, some like the stuff that attracts, that it makes sense. Of course, for everybody makes sense may different meaning, but I'm especially especially interested about what makes chess to you that much attractive, in the sense if you are, let's say, involved into some kind of, let's say, mathematics, music, harmony activity. There is some like that many times, because I am the guy who's just making all of this stuff and trying to put together, that many times, for example, in some research, there is the element that people who are attracted to chess, many times they appreciate beauty, logic, and harmony. And for example, there are many, let's say, musicians or artists that are getting into chess as well. Is there something that in your life makes that kind of, let's say, factors that I was just mentioning, or maybe there is something more?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's funny you mentioned music, because I grew up, my like main activity as a child was I played violin for 12 years. I'm like a Suzuki trained violinist. And so I think that also, like, applying that sort of discipline to chess has been really helpful. But yeah, I think there definitely is a kind of harmony in the way the pieces move. And once you really understand like the natural positions of pieces in the early, in the opening and in the middle game, I think that's really beautiful. I think also, as I've gotten more into looking at like really complex chess puzzles or looking at master games, I think there's a lot of beauty in that. I think there's also an element of like storytelling in puzzles and in games a lot of times. Like, I really love puzzles where it's kind of the underdog story, where say it's like white to move, and black is up just a boatload of material, but we have like one saving move that will, you know, save the game and find a crazy checkmate. I love that aspect of it, where it's like it really is kind of a story, and it's very beautiful. It is also probably the most I guess like logistical or mathematic activity I've ever felt attracted to in that way. I was very much more of like the artsy kid. I was never really a very like athletic person in school, so it also, this gives me an outlet for like my competitive side. So I think there's a lot that goes into the beauty of the game.
Okay, excellent. And that's why I was a little bit, let's say, predicting that there must be something with this, even if I didn't know, because I didn't, let's say, follow you before. After you just exploded with the video that I will just post in a moment, the link, how you get from 0 to 2000 in 2 years. By the way, at this moment, it has close to 200,000 views. If I can give us a little bit of insight before get into this a little bit deeper, did you expect it that much explosion, if I can say that? Because at this moment, you are not already as big chess content creator, and did you expect that it will explode that quickly and that short span of time?
No, definitely not. It's really funny because as I post videos, it sort of shows you like how many views your past videos had at like certain intervals, you know? And I think probably the first week after I posted it, I maybe had a couple hundred views, and then there was just a moment where the algorithm happened to pick it up and it just exploded. So it's been so cool to hear from people like all around the world of like how much they enjoyed hearing the story, and even just how inspiring it was. I never thought that so many people would find my story that intriguing. So it's been a crazy journey from that video on. It's been insane.
And if I get a little bit deeper, because I'm super curious, of course our community is curious as well, did you make some kind of expectation? For example, every content chess creator having some kind of, let's say, dreams, expected, let's say, results, some kind of, let's say, tasks. For example, did you expect, or maybe some kind of estimate, that after a month is my video, because it was the first video of yours, if I'm not mistaken, if the video gets, let's say, 2,000 views, I'll be super happy. Did you have something like that?
Oh yeah, I mean, maybe not a specific number, but I remember thinking like, oh, if this gets over like, honestly, like 100 views, I would have been really happy, which seems like crazy now in hindsight. But yeah, and then once there was a point where I was at my parents' house, and I remember going up to my mom and I was like, Mom, it has like 500 views. Wow. And now suddenly it's much higher than that. So it definitely took off beyond my wildest expectations. I still can't really believe it.
yeah, and it's very impressive. I'm super grateful that you put this video, let's say, into the YouTube. By the way, you just give a great job, because not about the video related to chess, first of all, but rather about the quality of the video. And now I am just posting the links, guys, into the video that we were talking about a little bit deeper. The title of the video is How I Accidentally Went from 0 to 2000 in Chess in 2 years, and the video is close to 200,000 views after 2 months of publication. Therefore, I would say a success. And now if I get us a little bit into the video, how did you come up over the idea to make the video as the first one, not about, for example, 5 tricks how you can win the game with the scholar's mate? It's like a little bit title that can be different, let's say, genre. And at the same time, what was the process of creating this video? Some like the plan, the structure, maybe somebody consulted with about some of the interesting facts, maybe somebody, let's say, give you a little bit of insight how to present specific parts and the one. If you can get us into this specific video that goes viral.
Yeah, so I went to college for, well, one of my majors was communication, and I did a lot of like film and media stuff. And so that's kind of where I got the experience of how to make those kinds of videos. But I've also just been really interested, like even as a kid, I would watch like documentaries like on National Geographic just for fun. I really liked the way they were edited, and I, would make my own little videos in my parents' basement. So I've kind of always had this knack and this interest in creating those kinds of like story-driven videos. I think it was around when, probably close to a year ago now, where I was around 1500, and I was looking back at my past like progress over the last year, and I was like, you know what? If I really like put some time in, I can probably make it to 2000. And so my first like thought of it was kind of that. And I was thinking sort of in the vein of like the Michelle Carré video of how she trained like a grandmaster. And there's other like similar like gaming documentary type videos that I was kind of thinking it would be similar to. But I wasn't really sure exactly how it would turn out until I started working on it like after I hit the 2000 mark. But the actual process of creating the video was really like a year in progress, because I had to sit down, and every time I was about to reach the next mark of like the 1500, 1600, I sat down with the camera and recorded myself as I was playing that final game. And so it was really in my mind for about the last year, and I was making some of the like animation stuff in the previous year too. So it was a long time coming. And then after I finally reached that milestone, I think it took about 2 weeks of me editing like every single night in order to get it done.
Yeah, but by the way, if I can interrupt for a while, I am super excited about the video, and at the same time I admire you as the content creator, and the video was, let's say, exploded, some like went viral, not by accident. Because what I'm impressed the most is not just that you got into 2000, because it's some like a chess related story, but rather about the quality, narration, storyteller, structure that you put on the video without using any stupid elements. And probably you know what kind of stupid elements are used by any other, let's say, creators, not just chess content creators, by others. You didn't do anything stupid, but at the same time, the video is brilliant. And now I am honestly and perfectly legit. If I didn't know that it is the video of yours, that you are not a filmmaker in the sense of, let's say, being hired at Walt Disney Studio, I would say this is the professional, let's say, professional work. And I'm pretty legit, because it was so great quality. Every single, let's say, part was coherent to each other. At the same time, there was the narrative, there is the drama, there is the expectation, there is the tension, there is the excitement. Everything was perfectly, let's say, put together. Therefore, big shout out for you and congratulations, because it is a piece of art.
Thank you so much. I really do appreciate that. Yeah, it was so much fun to make, and I'm glad other people enjoyed sort of the storytelling side of it for sure.
And therefore, I'm super grateful that you put that, because in the meantime, you are our guest. Otherwise, probably will not have you that quickly. Probably at some point, maybe I'll just, let's say, find you. But at this moment, you are just exploded, and probably this would be some like the, let's say, ignition fire to get you into, let's say, more contacts with the community. That we'll be talking in a moment how we are going to make the plans into the, let's say, next stages. But before that, I would like to ask you about a little bit different stuff related to chess, because for chess, for everybody is different. Maybe some like the combination of various elements. The question for you is the one: what is chess for you from your perspective? Is it an art, a sport, a science, or maybe any other phenomena, or maybe the mix, maybe any other else? How could you put this together from your perspective? How you can perceive chess, experience chess, and express chess?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it can really be kind of a combination of all three, the art and the sport and the science. I think the thing that attracts me the most about it is the artistic side of it. Like I was saying earlier, how, there are games and there are puzzles that are just really beautiful, and the way that the geometry of the board works sometimes is just incredible. And there are a lot of puzzles I've seen where I mean, a lot of times they're like compositions, but just the way that the diagonals and the way the pieces cover different squares on the board work together, I think that's what makes chess really beautiful. And as far as like the science side of it, I think that's like certain parts of the game are more like a science. Like I think the end games especially, it turns into a moment where, you know, there's one move that works and every other move is going to lose you the game or you know, blunder a draw. And also just like any moment throughout the game where both people who are playing know that the series of the next 5 or 6 moves are just absolutely forced. I think that's where it becomes, you know, much more scientific, which is really interesting. But then, you know, there are other games, like I think especially of like Tal's games, where it's very like sacrificing and you just super messy and you don't really know what's going on, but somehow it all works out. I think those are really funny and entertaining and also like just very beautiful. And then, yeah, as far as like a sport, I mean, like I said, I've never been super athletic, so I've never, the sporty side of me has always just been my competitive streak. And so at least for me, I think that chess players are very competitive. And so there is this like very primal clash that I think people experience of wanting the win so badly, but you just have to sit there at the board and the game is entirely played in your mind. So yeah, I think it's a bit of all three.
Okay, thank you very much. And by the way, we have some questions from our audience because there are more questions popping up. Therefore, I'll be let's say, putting them once in a while. The first question is from our friend Dajens. He asked the question, if you ever thought about streaming.
That's a great question. I've actually been asked that quite a bit. So my answer right now is yes, I have thought about it, but it's probably not going to happen for a while. And when it does happen, it probably won't be super regular. So I do work a full-time job. I'm also taking a graduate level class. I'm also, like I said, involved in the community and I'm trying to like improve my own chess. And so as far as time and also like making my content, which can take multiple hours every week just to, you know, squirt out one video. But yeah, so as far as time, it's become a bit of an issue of that, where I feel like I don't have the time to dedicate specifically to streaming. But I do have a Twitch channel created theoretically for the future. It's the same tag as like everything else. It's just Kamryn Heidi. It's got my red little profile picture on there. So if people want to follow that, I mean, if and when I do start streaming, and I'm thinking it'll probably be when I reach like a certain subscriber milestone, I'll probably just have like a celebration stream. That I'll obviously post about that on all my social media, so people shouldn't be too worried about missing out on that. But yeah, okay, sometime in the future, but not at the moment.
Okay, therefore we can safely say, if I understood correctly, that if you start or if you will be about to start streaming at Twitch, you'll just post the, let's say, notification and announcement at least at Twitter. Is that correct?
Yeah, Twitter, and I'll probably toss it in like the beginning of a YouTube video as well, and yeah, make comments. And yeah, people should know.
Okay, excellent. Therefore, we'll be keeping fingers crossed, and in the meantime, we'll be following you. And then another question from the chat that we are having is the question from our friend Gilga. How did you start, and what problems were there at the beginning? You just mentioned a little bit how did you start, but especially what were the problems and what were the challenges, and a little bit of how did you overcome them?
Sure. Well, I think, yeah, especially as a beginning player, it's hard. I think your mindset is very selfish. I think you're focused a lot on what your pieces are doing and not so focused on what the opponent's pieces are doing, at least in my experience. And so a lot of times beginner games, will end with like a very quick checkmate that has been being set up for like, you know, the last 3 moves and you just never noticed. And so, yeah, I think the first kind of big playing challenge I had overcoming was like, okay, I actually need to pay attention to what my opponent is doing. I can't just be moving my pieces where I want them to go. I have to play some defense too. And then also just like board vision, I think was a huge thing where, especially if like, again, going back to like the checkmate example, if there's a bishop and a queen lined up on a diagonal, but it's really far away, there's a big chance you're probably not going to see it. And so, yes, learning that, and then just all the basics of like end games and stuff, and how to do different checkmates, how to save a potentially drawn position. I think that comes up with it, but there's a lot of good online resources. I think it's not super necessary to like get a coach or pay for some super expensive course, although there are some great courses out there. But I think there's a lot of great beginner content just out already on the internet.
And another question, because you are just perfectly timed with the questions that we are following, therefore you are doing great, by the way, is the question about the openings, middle games, and end games in general, especially with the videos that you have learned, which help you the most, or which helps you remember that could help you the most, some like the groundbreaking, some like eye-opener, call it whatever you wish.
Sure, that's a great question. I remember when I first started out, I was watching a lot of Gotham Chess. Especially his old videos, I think right now he's very much more into the like game commentary and making things like super exciting to bring more people into chess, which is great. But a lot of his old videos were just like 10-minute opening videos, and those were really fun and really helpful for me at the beginning. I think where I found there's a lot of content missing is the middle game videos, which is kind of what I'm going to be attempting to put out over the next couple weeks. I've already put out one part in my middle game series and just trying to sort of distill down different parts of what I know, because I don't think there's really a dedicated series out there that I found that has been like just out there for free. I think it's really hard to explain the middle game, so that's probably why it's a little bit harder to create content around it. And then as far as end games, the one I'm going to right now, and it's a little bit more advanced, but it's Daniel Nieraditsky has done some really good videos on the pawn end games. And like I said, there's so many more out there that I just can't think of off the top of my head, but you search your certain opening, you'll come up with like dozens of different videos to look at.
Okay, thank you very much. And another topic that I would like to address a little bit at least, there is the difference between chess over the board and chess online. And what attracted you more, and how do you, let's say, interact with all of this, environment? For example, did you start more playing over the board and then got into the online, or maybe online pretty intense, and after a while you just simply let's say come up there about the idea that maybe you can just play over the board players, and how did you make the balance with that?
Yeah, so when I first started, like about the first year, I had never played a game over the board. I didn't even own a chessboard, and so I'm part of the stream of people that began pretty recently and have not been involved in the over-the-board community. And I think that's really good, because I mean, there's a ton of resources online, and it's great to just have that on demand. Like you can sit down and play a game against somebody at your level at any time of the day. But at the same time, once I started getting more involved in my over-the-board community and started like playing physical games with people, there's a certain energy about that is very appealing to me. And it takes a lot of getting used to if you're used to just like, hunkering down and sitting in front of your computer to play a game. Going to a club is kind of a different experience. And it's even hard, I found, for somebody who did learn to play chess on a computer screen to be able to visualize the board the same way. I used to say, like, I lose 200 points of rating when I sit down to play an over-the-board game because I just couldn't visualize the 3D pieces as well. I don't know exactly what that phenomenon is, but it has definitely been a struggle to overcome. I think I'm a little bit better now. But yeah, there's just so many things with over the board. There's the distractions if you're playing in a tournament of people moving around, the body language of your opponent, the physical nature of like sitting across from somebody for so long. But I think if you are like considering going to a club, it is definitely worth it just to have that experience. What I also missed when I was only playing online is being able to talk to other people about chess, because I would be playing an opening and I was I was fairly beginner level, but I would always get hit with like one certain move, and I would love to ask a stronger player of like, what should I do against this move, and whatever it was, the Scandinavian. And so yeah, I think just having access to like stronger players and being able to help out the weaker players too, it's a whole ecosystem, I should say.
And by the way,
people helping.
If I can give you a little bit of hope, maybe encouragement, maybe both, we on Twitch will try to recreate the similar conditions as people have over the board. Because, for example, right now when we are just online and just let's say watching each other's, if you'll be playing the games, you could mute yourself. I will be commenting to the viewers, and after the games we'll be commenting each other, and the viewers will know what I commented on the part that you were playing. You probably were not, let's say, realizing some of the moves, ideas, mistakes, and so on. And after the, let's say, game is over, we'll be talking each other and discussing, let's say, some of the concepts, some of the stuff you missed, some of the stuff you misevaluate, and so on. And we are trying to make it some like the similar way, or as much similar as possible, especially with the, let's say, era of pandemia, right? Because back then it was the lockdown, it was the stuff that people couldn't get outside, and therefore at Twitch community we try to make this pretty much similar. And what about, let's say, the biggest differences, if you can put into, let's say, the list of, let's say, 5 to 6 elements, or the, let's say, points that you think that the chess online versus chess over the board, what are the biggest differences from your perspective?
Yeah, I think, going back to the energy, first of all, of sitting across from somebody, that's completely different than just seeing their little profile picture online. I think there's also this tendency of folks online to, because it's anonymous, they feel more entitled to maybe troll a little bit more, where you wouldn't say those kinds of things to somebody in person. Obviously, I haven't experienced too much of that, but there is enough that it's like, okay, obviously this is not super great etiquette. I think there's a lot more distractions in over-the-board chess, especially if you're playing in more of like a public area, or you're playing in a big tournament hall. There's just more people around you, so there's more things to look at. You're not just alone in your room or wherever you happen to be playing chess. What else? Oh, online, I think there's something to be said about being able to draw arrows. It seems very simple, but like if you're used to drawing a lot of arrows while you're playing a game, and then you go and sit and play over the board, it's like, well, where's my arrow button? You can't draw the arrows.
Can you make it with the, let's say, either fingers, either markers, or is it not allowed over the board?
There are some guys at my club that will actually touch the squares as they're thinking, but I think in general, it's a little bit more discouraged.
Yeah, and probably it may be distracted, and you can have the legal complaints to the arbiter, right? Because it's normal disruption. You cannot do so. Neither of the distraction, actually, right?
And speaking of that, I think another difference is there's a lot more etiquette involved in over the board. I remember when I first went to my first tournament, I was like frantically Googling the night before, chess tournament etiquette, and trying to find, different things of how do you offer a draw? How do you, when to pause the clock and get the arbiter, and just all these random little things that you wouldn't think about until you're actually about to go sit down and play. I think those are probably the main ones. I could list 100 more, but it's definitely a different experience.
Okay, and the one question about this one, because in a moment we'll go into the next question from the chat. What was the biggest of all of this, let's say, surprises between online and over the board? For example, you expect A and you were given B. So like, oh my goodness, I didn't thought it would be this way. The biggest of the differences between online and over the board, especially with your expectations.
That's a tough one. I honestly think it's probably the difficulty I had visualizing things over the board. I did not realize how different that would feel to my mind, just sitting with the 3D board as opposed to the 2D board on the computer screen. I think that's probably the biggest one. Maybe a close second would just be, like I said, the etiquette of, like, for example, I one time, I beat a strong player when I was first starting to go, and I reached out to shake his hand, and I said, good game. And he got kind of mad, and he said it was not a good game, and he started resetting up the pieces. So I think just you just got to be very polite, and just probably, if you're questioning whether you should say something, just don't say anything, just shake hands, and it's all gonna be okay.
Yeah, sometimes it's maybe difficult, especially if the players are pretty much obsessed about chess. Sometimes they are not working hard enough, and sometimes, for example, they started too late and they have unrealistic expectations. Because many times there are some players who are cocky, not because they are, let's say, pretty much driven by the success, but rather because they have the unrealistic goals and they cannot, let's say, fulfill this, and each of the, let's say, failures, if each of the stuff they didn't fulfill, they are some like get mad, not because of you, but because of their unrealistic expectations. Just to clarify something, okay?
Right, exactly.
Okay, and let's get into the question that I mentioned that will be asked in a moment. Our friend Flyner from our community has the question to you. Do you have a goal beyond 2000? Because you reach 2000, and if there is the next plans, for example, reaching National Master, maybe reaching Women FIDE Master, maybe reaching 2400 ELO, maybe being the best in the chesscom server, whatever it is.
Yeah, well, I think my goals have become a little bit less concrete at this point. My main focus now is actually increasing my USCF rating, which is the United States Chess Federation equivalent of FIDE. I think it's like generally like 100-ish points
It
less
is
than
about
FIDE
60,
or whatever.
70. Back then it was 100, now it's 60, 70. It's a little
Okay.
less.
Gotcha. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's kind of my main thing because my USCF rating is much lower than 2000. I think it's around 1400 now, but the problem with just playing in my small little community in North Dakota is like generally pretty small chess community, so I always end up playing the same people all the time, and so we're just kind of trading around rating points even as we all continue to improve. There's not really a massive rating gain happening with people who maybe deserve to have a much higher rating. And I don't know if my rating should necessarily be like 2000. My USCF should be 2000 right now. I don't think that's probably correct, but I think it should be a little bit higher than 1400. And so yeah, my goal is to get to the 2000 there, and then maybe beyond that go for a title. But I do like to think in terms of things that I can control, and right now being in this community, it is harder to control the amount of points I gain in a particular tournament or whatever. So I'm just trying to play my best over the board and take that a little bit more seriously. And then online, I'm just trying to like increase my blitz and bullet scores, get those up a little bit higher, even though those don't super matter, but it is just a little bit more fun.
And I'll get into the question because I know that probably it may be important, and I would like to ask you the question a little bit more specific. Which one of the following would help you the most in your chess activity overall? Not just as chess player, but as chess promoter, chess instructor, chess YouTuber, call it whatever you wish. Having a high USCF rating, having the title of National Master, or having the title of Certified Coach, because there are some type of recognition. Which one would help you the most at this moment? For example, let's say in 6 months from now.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think probably having a title is probably what my biggest goal would be, and I think it helps in all those things that like as a coach it gives you a little bit more a little bit more credibility, just to like have that title, even if parents of beginner students don't necessarily know what that means. I think having a title helps, and then also it's just nice to have the little NM before your name. I think that would be cool.
Okay.
I don't think that's going to happen in the next 6 months, but
we are just making
know.
a little bit of let's say estimation, right? Can happen.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. And now we are getting into the topic that we just started already. It is the chess progress and chess improvement and how to get better and how to understand it and how to know if you are developing our chess potential. Because there are the times that some players say, if your rating grows, you must be better. Others says, no, it's not just the rating. If you are reaching the titles, you are get better. And others says, if you are just beating the lower rated players. And there are another approaches. And what is your perception? What is your approach to becoming better? What does it mean to you to become better? For example, what are the, let's say, factors and what are the signals that you are becoming better? Maybe more of them than I explained, but for you, what are the most important and what you are just focused on to know that you are getting better?
Yeah, I think the ratings are a good measurement of your improvement, but I think it can become kind of toxic if you're only like hyper focusing on rating, which I may sound a little bit hypocritical because the video I put out was like, okay, I set this goal to get this certain
pause
rating.
for a while. If you have 2000, you can flex, right?
Yes, exactly.
Please continue.
Yeah, so I think hitting the rating milestones is definitely a sign of it. But I think as I was improving, it was also important to me to try to focus a little bit less on the ratings and maybe look at it more holistically. I also found that like when I took a break is when my rating after I came back from the break shot up a lot. So just like kind of clearing my head and coming back with fresh eyes. But then I think another way to like measure improvement is kind of like you said, the players you can beat. So for example, like there are certain players at my club where when I first started out, I had absolutely no chance of ever winning or drawing a game against them. But now like a year later, it's a little bit more 50-50, or I might even be beating some of those players. And that also encourages them to get a little bit better, because it's like, oh, Kamryn used to be so bad and now she's suddenly beating me. And so I think, having those like consistent opponents is kind of helpful to measure your progress too. And then I think just like having measurable, like smaller goals has been really helpful for me. And again, they kind of center along rating, but there are also more like abstract things that I can see happening. And a lot of times it's in hindsight where you realize you've improved, where that you might see an idea in a game, some like sacrificing idea that you wouldn't have seen 6 months ago, and you can see your improvement in that. And just like being able to consider those kinds of moves has been a good like measure of my improvement, at least for me.
Okay, thank you very much. And by the way, just about the ratings, I would be a little bit aware of the ratings, because ratings can be very easily manipulated. I'll just give you a little bit, let's say, insight into this, because probably you may not be aware of that. For example, imagine you are playing 1600 player, and the player is from your, let's say, local club, and you beat this player, let's say, 8-2, right? Out of 10 games, 8-2. If you'll be playing online knowing that this is this player, you'll be expecting the same. Is that correct?
Yes, probably.
And take notice that you have the same rating player, but not the exact player, but 16 rating player. If you'll not know who is this player, you'll be expecting that you'll be winning more than losing. Is that correct? Because you're right now, you are 2017, I check it out, right? Being 2000 rated, you expect that you are beating 1600 player, I would say easily, or maybe more winning than losing. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And now I'll give you the trap, because this trap you'll be not aware of this trap. That, for example, do you know Dania Naroditsky?
Sure.
Do you know what is the speedrun?
Yes.
Imagine Dania Naroditsky has 1600 doing speedrun. How many times you are going to win?
Yeah, that's true. Absolutely zero.
And that's why
true.
I am the proponent not to focus about the rating, but focus about the progress, but progress in a different type of measurement. But of course, we can just discuss it maybe a little bit later. And now another stuff, it is connected for the training, for the progress, for the rating, for your plans and so on. What about chess training, and what about chess practice? How to create training plan, and how did you create your chess training plan, and did you modify it along the way, or maybe did you consult with other coaches, other players, other, let's say, club members and so on? How did you come up over the plan? Because at your videos you provided excellent stuff that you planned something, you just organized, you just studied and so on. And what was the plan overall that you started the chess and getting into 2000? If you can share with us, it would be fantastic.
Yeah, so I think when I first actually like set out a set study training plan for myself, it was, like I said, probably about a year ago, when everything kind of became a lot more serious. And so what I decided was I had about 3 hours a day to spend. I would spend like 9 p.m. to midnight working on my chess, and sometimes it became more than that because I would be playing a lot of blitz games or whatever, but that was my main core. And so I would do 1 hour of puzzles, so Puzzle Rush, and also some longer puzzles, and then I would do 1 hour of playing rapid games, and then also analyzing them after I was done playing the games. And then I would do one part of kind of a wild card hour of openings, end games, longer calculation puzzles, things like that. And so that has kind of since then been the core of like my study plan, and it has shifted a little bit based on my weaknesses that I've discovered, which I for a while at the end of each week I had a document that I called Why I'm Losing. So I would go back through all the games that I played, and I would put just like 1 or 2 sentences of, okay, where did it all go wrong? Where did I lose this game? Did I just like simply blunder a piece, or was it like a longer like calculation mistake that I made? And so just having like a whole bunch of that data helped me see kind of my weaknesses I was struggling with. I also put the openings in there so I could see which games I was losing based on like the structures that evolved from certain openings. Excuse me. And then I would apply that to sort of like what I needed to work on in the next couple weeks, as I was going. So I think, especially after I had a big tournament, that was often where I would sort of take a break and then change up my study plan a little bit based on the mistakes I saw I was making in those games. Especially recently, I've been having trouble like converting winning positions. So I would get a really good position out of the opening, but then I would not be able to convert it, and it would suddenly turn on me in the end game, or it would, I would I would get too comfortable, too cocky, and I would blunder some kind of thing in the last second, because they're playing for their life, they're down an exchange or whatever, and I'm just much too casual about the state of the game, and so I think that whole mindset thing has also been something I've been trying to work on internally. But yeah, as far as the training plan, like I said, I've done one part puzzles, one part playing and analyzing, and then one part, studying openings, end games, whatever else I need to work on.
And I have the question because I'm not sure if I understood correctly, but were you inspired by any chess coach, any chess YouTuber, any book, chess offer about the stuff that you mentioned? I call it the feedback, right? Because you mentioned that after the game you started realizing that it was a good idea to write down what was the reason for the, let's say, losing the game or not winning the game that you should win, and so on. What was this feedback all about? Did you come up over this by yourself, or did you discover it by any of the, let's say, chess books, chess articles, chess websites, maybe chess content creator, maybe club members, maybe the chess president? What was the, let's say, idea that you put over that? Because if you did it by yourself, I'm very impressed.
Well, maybe you should be impressed, because I can't think actually of if there was somebody in particular that inspired that. I think it may have just come from, there are various folks who often say things like, oh, you need to like analyze your mistakes and you need to like improve your weaknesses, which seems very self-explanatory and very obvious. But I think as far as I remember, the idea came to me that I was like, oh, if I just like put all this stuff in a list, that will just help me see it on paper and see that where my mistakes are, so I can improve on those faster and not continue to like try to improve something that is just fine for somebody at my level. Yeah. So I think it came from my head, kind of, maybe.
But anyway, I'm impressed because take notice that I was watching your videos, I mean, especially the first episode, very, very thoroughly, and I was something like that. Either you have the coach, either you are the very, let's say, bright person with the creative approach and with some like analytical skills, but I mean really analytical skills. I do not ask about the maths, probably you may have some success as well, because the stuff that you put into the video, in the sense of being, let's say, diligent student and having the plan, the structure, the goal, it's some like super unusual for, I would call, average person. Average in the sense, not the, let's say, person that is very much driven about the goal, about the structure, about being perseverant, about being always and diligent. That's what I mean.
Sure, yeah. And I think that's why I'm like trying to put my process like out there in these videos. Like I made a video on the document called Why I'm Losing, just to like give other people these kinds of ideas, because I think they are just kind of very specific and niche things that I gleaned from various other sources, that just little pieces here and there that sort of came into this fully grown idea. And if that can help somebody else, I think that's really great.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'm really impressed because take notice there are majority of players who are either not listening others about the pieces of advice, or they are some, like many times I'm pretty impressed that, for example, I am 2200 leeches, right? And there are the players who are popping up sometimes in our community, in my channel. They are rated 1000 and they ask the question, how can I get in 2000 in a month? Right? And I was like, you need to get into the other channel. We do not let's say, we do not offer the magic potion, right?
Yeah, there's no magic pill.
yeah, not magic pill, some like chess gambit, right? Queen's gambit.
Yeah. Right.
And another stuff that is pretty connected to the previous one, we were talking about the training plan and chess practice. And now, what about setting the goals and reaching them? What is needed to make it happen? Because if I'm not mistaken, you are pretty much very driven person about the goal oriented, right? And you are just setting the goal and you are trying to reach this goal. I wouldn't say no matter what, but with something like a pretty much let's say, focus about what needs to be done to reach this goal, and if there is the possibility or necessity to make the changes, you apply them, you accept them, and you are going forward. That's why it is the success from my standpoint. What about setting the goals and reaching them?
Yeah, I found that especially like in the last year, the goals that I've set have to be realistic. So when I was around 1500 and I was like, can I maybe get to 2000 in the next year or so? I sat down and I did the math and I said, okay, if I gain I think it was about like 10 rating points per week. If I go up about 10 rating points per week, I should be able to get there. And I thought that was like realistic enough. And so that's why I decided on that particular goal, because it was realistic and it was also like measurable in terms of numbers. And I think also setting like short-term like goals in the middle of that was a little bit more helpful. and not even necessarily like rating goals, but just things like I realized I was getting into time trouble a lot, especially when I was playing over the board, but also when I was playing just like the rapid games. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to not lose any games on time. If I do lose a game on time, I will consider it like a failure of this goal that I've put into effect. And even if I win a game, but I was down a lot of time and I wasn't sticking to like whatever particular goal I set, whether it's not drop below 5 minutes below my opponent or whatever it was, then also consider that game a failure of the goal. And so I think that kind of mindset helped me kind of along the way. Like I said before, excuse me, there's also something to be said about like goals that are like within your control. So I think especially in the online sphere, it's a lot easier to control like the time you're spending, because you're able to play players who are at your level and kind of measure exactly like how much rating you're going to gain or like how much time you're going to spend on this certain game. Whereas over the board, especially like in my area, I might be playing an unrated player and then I might be playing like an 1800 and it's just kind of all over the place. So that's a little bit less in my control. So yeah, I think it is very much just about making them very realistic and also just being very patient. There was a certain time, especially during my like plateau in the last couple months of last year, where I had to, I was getting so emotionally involved in the games and I was going on these long losing streaks, and it was it was a very like difficult thing to overcome and to be like, okay, I'm going to be very extreme. I'm going to play one single game every single day, and that's it.
Just one. Yep. The only one.
Exactly. Instead of sitting down and going down this rabbit hole, and that's how I go into the losing streak. So yeah, win or lose, I would play one game a day. Sometimes I maybe did two, but I tried to do just one. And yeah, I think again, just things that are within your control is helpful in creating a goal or a plan.
Okay, thank you very much. And I was just making the only one due to the memes that was pretty much popping up at chesscom, because chesscom many times just putting the memes either on the website, either on Twitter, either any other, let's say, media, and they are many times making the, let's say, this type of memes related to the player has the rating, let's say 1700, and there is the, let's say, saying that I will play just one game. And it is the, let's say, timer that is on like 10 p.m. and then another picture next to the previous one, 6 a.m. having 600 rating and crying.
Exactly. Oh, I've definitely been there. You have to be very disciplined to just play one game, and especially if you get in like, especially the faster time controls. I think it's like very easy to have a lot of hours go by and you don't even notice. Yeah. So yeah, those are really funny.
Yeah, definitely. And by the way, we have one friend on the channel that I recently played puzzle battles, and we were trying to make a little bit of challenge and trying to, let's say, outperform each other. And one stream was related to, let's say, content that I prepare normally, some like educational one. At the end of the content, I was streaming for 2 hours. I told my audience that we'll be making the guest, our friend Drunklight, that will be playing puzzle battles for 1 hour. And he was that much competitive that after 3 hours he said, okay, maybe it's enough.
That sounds just about right.
Therefore, players probably has a little bit problems with the time. Probably Einstein has something to do with this, right? Time relation, right?
Exactly. That's so funny.
Okay, and let's go for the next question. Thank you very much for patience. Guys, our friend Gilka has the question. In your video, he saw that you are using a bullet journal. What did you write in there, and if you still do it, and is it related to chess? Some like your notes that you provided into this. If you can give us a little bit of insight, how did you manage this?
Yeah, it is like the style is the bullet journal. It's like very, very messy. I have it right here. It's just very like random notes that I'll make. It's not anything super organized. I've kind of moved away from that for a while. I was using it to write down like my opening studies, but I quickly found that it's really hard to do that on paper. And so it's just a lot easier to use something like a lead chess study for your openings. And so I kind of moved away from that. But sometimes like, I think it was Chess Dojo maybe that has made the suggestion of going through a game and like writing down your thoughts for every single move. And so I've actually done that for a couple of my games, especially like my longer classical games. And I've done it for a couple of my online rapid games too, that were just like, I don't know where I went wrong in this game. And so writing down my thought process is really helpful. And I think so when I do that, I do it on the board, like on the physical board. And then also just to add to the like tangible aspect of that, I will also just like handwrite it. So that's what is the shots in that video are mostly from those sorts of things. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for answering the question. And our friend Laura from New York, probably you may have heard about her. Laura is a chess instructor. Yeah. She's pretty much into chess and she loves chess. She's a chess passionate as well. She has the question to you. She's wondering about the organized studies and if those are accessible. And the question of her to you, if you play in chesscom or lead chess team, to motivate you to play, let's say, more. And if you played some people which help you with accountability. Not sure if I pronounced that.
Does she mean like specifically like on teams on chess.com?
Yeah, probably with the teams that you're, for example, if you are playing in the team, you can have the people who are way stronger for you. They can help you with preparation, they can help you with analysis, they can help you with organized studies, maybe the programs, maybe the engines, maybe setting up all of the tournaments, maybe having where the tournaments close to you, maybe the simuls, all of this activity that you're involved in the team, it may be a little bit a way more helpful to become better due to having the access to the players who may have way more resources.
Yeah, that actually isn't something I have done too much. I don't think I'm in any teams at the moment. I think the closest thing is I've done some what's it called? What are they called? I can't remember. Just like online tournaments where you're paired against people of different ratings, but I haven't actually been involved in an online like community like that. And so where I do find the community and the stronger players is at my local like over the board chess club. And so I think that's probably the closest thing. But I do think that especially like since the pandemic, people have really realized how cool it is that we can connect with people all over the world in chess, especially like different rating levels and have different experiences and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, that's definitely something I'd be willing to look into. I think it's really cool to, connect with like so many different people and get different people's insights for sure.
And by the way, if you're interested, because of course it depends on you, but if you'd like to become better and have this contact with this type of people who are focused mainly on getting better and partial in getting better over the board, because it's over the board as well, there is the Chess Dojo. I'm not sure if you have heard about them. Chess Dojo is the community that are just focused the people about the training and so on. And therefore, if you are, let's say, interested about it, I wholeheartedly recommend it.
Yes, I definitely have heard of them. I've looked into them a little bit. I just haven't had the time to do a super deep dive or actually get involved. But yeah, I think they're a really great core group of people for sure.
Okay, thank you very much. And as we just mentioned, the goals and reaching them, now there will be something of the stuff that we just mentioned a few times, but I guess it needs to be a little bit deeper investigated. What about chess plateau, chess regress, and other forms of upsets? Which one do you remember the most? Which were the most painful? And how did you overcome it? With yourself, with some kind of trainer, maybe psychologist, maybe some kind of, let's say, friends? How did you, let's say, get back into that track? If I can say that, chess plateau, chess regress, and upsets.
Yeah, I think there are two main like plateaus I can remember very specifically. I think the first was like around 1500 where I was just stuck there for a couple months as far as I remember, and I felt very like I just remember like mentally feeling very weighed down by all the information I was consuming, and I was just spending a lot of time on chess, which is great, but it was becoming just very overwhelming with all the random pieces of information I had. And so I was kind of forced to take a break after that. I had like an out-of-town work gig, and so I told myself, okay, I'm not going to play any chess. I'll keep up with my like 3 daily games I have against friends. And then once I came back, like I said before, that's when my rating sort of skyrocketed. So it's like I felt that my rating should have been higher and like my skills were better. And then finally the numbers started to reflect that. So that, I mean, it sounds just kind of like magic, like, oh, just take a break and come back and you'll be fine. And I don't think it always works like that. But I think when I have felt very overwhelmed, just taking a break has helped me come back with a lot more clarity. The second plateau that was the most brutal for sure was after I reached 1900 for the first time. And I never got any further than that. I dropped it over the next 3 days back down about 150 points, just tilted it all away. And I spent the next couple months building back up to 1900 first of all, and then I was kind of plateaued in the 1800 1900 range for a while, and then yeah, I finally got to 2000. I think in the video it's really funny, you can see the first time I got to 1900 I was like just like cheering and very like egotistical and like, oh, this is so easy. And then the second time I just like kind of looked at it and just kind of sighed because it had been such a long way to come back. But yeah, and then finally I did make it to the 2000, but that's where I really learned the value of patience. That's where I started playing just one game a day, and I got a lot more disciplined about it because those players are very good. They're very hard games. It's not like I was just blundering things away. It was really difficult games to play, and it was, I think, also at that level really hard to know what exactly I needed to do better, because at kind of the lower levels it's much more tangible things like, oh, you need to work on your tactics, you're losing a lot of tactics, every move, you need to look for checks because you're missing some really good moves you could have if you look for checks. But I felt like I had kind of all those basic things down, and it was really just much more nuanced things that I was losing to. So it was very much like an internal mental battle that I was going through with myself, of like, okay, I feel like I'm doing everything right, but nothing is really happening, and I just keep losing. So I think becoming a little bit more emotionally detached from the games, not looking at the number as much, and just playing the one game a day, looking at it very like objectively as if somebody else had played the game, not as if it was me and my mistakes. Like it was just a game and just the board, and you're not worried about yourself or the opponent. It's just the pieces and the moves and everything very mathematically and objectively. I think, yeah, that patience and that discipline is what slowly helped me step back up to the 1900 and then eventually to the 2000.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm very impressed when you say just playing one game. In probably 99% of people of the population, unless they are inactive, it's impossible. If either they are playing 50 games, 150 or 250, but one game a day, it seems to me some like I would need to live on the place there is no internet connection, just maybe 10 minutes internet connection a day, and I can play this, let's say, with this time frame.
Yes, it was very hard to just stop, especially after I lost the one game. Like if I played the game and I lost, it was like, all right, I just have to step away.
I need to click rematch.
Yeah, I know. And sometimes I did. Sometimes I broke, and then I'd lose the 8 points and then gain the 8 points back or whatever, and it was fine. But then sometimes I would lose again, and it's like, okay, now I really need to step away. But I was also playing like Blitz and Bullet in there, so it wasn't. It was kind of cheating to just say one game a day. I was playing some faster time controls too, but one rapid game a day was kind of the plan.
Yeah, one rapid game seems reasonable because there are the blitzes and bullets. Therefore, one rapid game, 50 blitzes and 100 bullets seems legit, right?
Yes, yeah, that seems a little more realistic.
Okay, excellent. And now let's get for the next stuff. In a moment, we'll be getting the questions from the chat as well, guys. Therefore, feel free to share them. And we are talking about getting to the 2000 at chesscom, and what would be 8 to 10 checkpoints with 1 or 2 sentences about each of them. Some like your checkpoints that you reflected that you are getting the next level, and what was the idea that you need to get into the next one. So like maybe less. It doesn't need to be 8, 10.
Sure, yeah, I'll go based on my like kind of rating checkpoints that I vaguely remember hitting. So like the first step would be I was just playing the bots online, and I didn't play like a real game, if you can call an online game a real one, but I didn't play against a real person until April 2021, and that's when I got around 700. I was very much feeling still like a beginner then, but I kind of had a grasp of how everything worked and kind of getting all the rules down. I reached the 1000 rating in August of 2021. I don't really remember that one so much like vividly. It was just like, oh, I guess I'm 1000 now. And then in November, I got to 1200, which felt a little bit more of a big deal because, when I was first starting out, I was watching just like all the chess content I could consume, and I saw a lot of there. I think that was around the like PogChamps era, where there's a lot of the streamers who were fairly lower rated. Maybe lower rate is a bad word, but around like 1200 were some of the better ones. And I was like, I think I can get to 1200. That felt like about the peak that I would be able to achieve. So when I got there, and then about 2 months later in January, I was 1300, and I was like, oh, maybe I can go a little bit further. This was also around the time that I started to get more involved in my like chess club, or when I first started going to chess club. And so the over the board kind of took over for a couple months there, and so there was actually a bit of a plateau there. If you look on my rating graph around 1300, just because I wasn't playing so many games. I think I was playing more Blitz and Bullet around that time. You know how that will just suck up your time, and I wasn't so concerned about my rapid rating. I was more concerned about beating the guys at the club. And then in May, I hit 1500. This was also around the time I graduated from my undergraduate degree at university. And that was also when I set my goal of reaching 2000. And then we had the kind of another long plateau until about July of 2022. That's when I had very quickly 1600, 1700, 1800 over the course of about a month, maybe a month and a week or so. And then I hit 1900 in September of 2022 for the first time. Like I said, dropped all the way back down to in the, I think, 1750 range. And then slowly worked my way back up over the course of the next 5-ish months, I think. Got to 1900 a couple more times. And then I finally reached 2000 in February of this year. And that's where we stand today. I haven't played too many rapid games since then, so my rating hasn't gone up a whole bunch since I got to 2000, but here we are.
2000 mission accomplished, we can return to the planet Earth.
Yeah, exactly.
Excellent.
That's a good way of thinking.
Okay, thank you very much. And another question from our friend Gilga is the question, the following. In your opinion, how important is over the board? Would you say that you can achieve 2000 ELO even without playing over the board? I mean, 2000 ELO at chesscom Rapid if you didn't play any games over the board, right? Probably this is the question.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it's definitely possible. I think there's plenty of players who, I think especially who got into it around like the time of the pandemic, who just, you know, chess has just always been like another computer game and they just progressively get better and better. But I think for me, at least, the over the board really gave me the motivation to keep going and the connections, and it made me feel a lot more a part of the community. It also kind of gave me the, like, I was being able to compare myself to kind of other people more, which isn't always a good thing, but it's good to talk to people around your rating is more what I mean, is like the kinds of mistakes and the way that higher rated players talk can also help, and they can also give you like good resources. I've gotten the majority of the books that I have used have come from Mr. Todd Wolf, who I mentioned earlier. He's just got like a huge library of them. So I think just getting more resources and just like getting more involved in the community. On the other hand, if you're really involved, for example, in your community with like the Twitch, and I think you have like a Discord, I think that can also help add to that. But I think it's definitely possible. But for me, at least, it just gave me the motivation to keep going. And then I set that goal kind of on my own separately from that.
And can we say that over the board, let's say being able to play games against club members and being in this community of club members help you to persevere up to getting to 2000? Is it correct?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think I ever told any of them really about that goal, but I think the physical nature of playing an over the board game makes it feel so much more real. And so especially playing in like longer tournaments, those specific games will help you improve if you actually go through the process of analyzing a longer classical game that you play over the board. That will help you more than like 100 rapid games that you play. So I think it feels so much more real, and it makes everything feel just so much more tangible and real. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And another topic that we partially mentioned, but I guess it can be get a little bit deeper. Chess with or without coach? Maybe a stronger player who can show us our mistakes and tell us what needs to be done to get rid of them. What do you think about these two approaches? Are they mutually exclusive, or maybe at some point there is the coach that is needed, and other there you can just do the work by your own? What was in your games, and what is your general perspective based on the goal that you reached 2000?
Yes, I've never had a formal coach. So just off of that note, like on a very basic level, it definitely is possible to improve without a coach, but I have used other resources and other people that have sort of acted like my coach. So going back to going to the club, the stronger players there, when I sit down and like analyze games with them, like I recently played in the North Dakota State Championship or whatever it's called. And I happened to play a game against who would become the champion this year, Mr. Todd Wolf, for the third time. And going through and analyzing that game with him and another strong player just last week, I think has been really helpful. I think it's so interesting to see the way they think and the way that stronger players, like how they were thinking during the game is really interesting to hear. So I think that can definitely help. I have considered in the past getting a coach, and I have not like ruled out that possibility too. I think it very much depends on like your personality. Because for me personally, I'm very self-motivated, very driven, just like by my own internal goals, and I'll sit down and I'll make myself do the hard things.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people's personality, they would rather have somebody like making a schedule for them and telling them what to do, which is totally fine. Both are completely valid. So I think, yeah, it depends on personality and like just what you feel you need. There's huge benefits to having a coach, but it's also possible to improve without one. So both sides.
Okay, thank you very much. Great points, by the way. It was not that common, because you just brought the point that was very, very important. At the same time, you just back it up, that it depends on the personality. And you just mentioned that you are goal-oriented and you are just self-motivated, and therefore you do not need to have the coach. Of course, from once in a while, probably the coach may be helpful, but mostly you can do the work by your own, and you can organize yourself, right? Because you just organize the studies, you organize all of the notes, all of the tournaments, all of the games, all of the, let's say, ratings. You just put this together by yourself, and therefore you just withstand with this, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that's probably why I haven't felt the need for a coach up until this point, because I'm like, well, what are they gonna add for me as far as like organizing my studies? Obviously, I'd probably find some value in it, but yeah, again, it does definitely depend on personality of when you feel like you need one.
Okay, excellent. And another, let's say, topic that I would like to address probably is a natural consequences of all of the stuff that we just mentioned. It is because I just mentioned many times that you are not the ordinary person. So like the person that can stack at 1500 and then so like, I don't know what to do. Sorry, it's the chesscom fault because they have rating inflation, right? So I'm like making a little bit of troll, of course. Are you a talented person, or do you achieve goals due to grinding? And what makes you so special? Just put all of the put all of the positive stuff of yourself. Some like on the curriculum vitae you will be let's say hired by Google or any other companies you dream of. Just put all of the positive stuff. We are with this fully. Go on.
Yeah, I think there has to be a little bit of both, right? I think people who have like a natural talent for things like chess, I think it's kind of the effect of it leads to them actually wanting to play chess and having that interest. And so I think the talent is more kind of the spark for it. So when I first sat down to learn how everything moved, it all seemed like very natural to me. And so I think that's what made me more interested in continuing to learn the game and continuing to learn like the idiosyncrasies of it. But then especially at a certain point past like the beginner level, I think putting in that hard work and putting in the multiple hours, setting out a specific study schedule for myself, doing all the things that aren't really as fun, not just sitting and playing Blitz all day, which again, very fun, and that's totally fine. But once I had that goal in mind, I knew that I had to put in the hard work to get there. And it's definitely not talents that got me from, 0 to 2000 in 2 years. It's definitely I think I definitely put in the work, and again, like we said earlier, there was not some magic pill, there's not the magic potion. It was a lot of time, and it was a lot of emotional losses and ecstatic wins, and so yeah, I think a little bit of both.
And I just give in behalf of yours, because you didn't want to make yourself flatter, I just the comment in behalf of yours. Is that okay?
Sure.
On the chat, I put the following sentence, and it is from my let's say account, but from your heart probably. I got to 2000 just naturally. Of course, it's an attempt to make a little bit of fun, right? Because of course you grinded down very much, but it sounded like okay, I get to 2000 naturally. After I reach 2400, I consider having the coach. Maybe I'll just start working hard, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, it was a little bit of fun, of course, a little bit of joke.
That's funny.
And another one, I would like to ask you about, let's say, the chess community, and especially you and chess community. I mean, who are you in chess community in a global sense? What roles and functions do you perform? Are you a chess educator, chess promoter, instructor, maybe content creator, maybe in the future chess streamer? How do you see yourself if all of the roles, all of the functions, let's say back then, right now, and in the near future?
Sure. Right now, Well, as far as like the content I'm creating, especially, I think it is kind of turning into a bit more of like an educator role. But I do want my content to be like very relatable, which I think I probably have kind of a unique position as far as content creators, because I was at some of these lower rating levels very recently. And so I remember the way I was thinking, a year ago, 2 years ago. So I'm kind of able to understand the questions a little bit better because it was just so recently. And yeah, I think as far as making more content, I also want to put my own little, special spark on everything. For example, in the first video, making it more of a documentary style instead of just me sitting down in front of a camera, and just talking for 20 minutes and not having the fun editing and the music. I think adding that in, and then like recently I made a fun little short that I wanted to do just as kind of a personal project, and I was like, oh, I'll toss it on the YouTube of making chess in the style of Wes Anderson, and the director who has kind of a quirky style. Mm-hmm. And so I made that with some friends. And so, yeah, I think just doing little fun projects, little unique things like that, is hopefully going to kind of set me apart. And that's kind of how I see my role in entering this niche community of online chess content creation. Mm-hmm. And as far as like the folks in my own community too, I kind of want to be, it seems kind of egotistical, but like I want to be kind of a role model. I've worked with some younger students, and there's some girls that I've worked with who are in elementary school, and they feel comfortable talking to me about how, oh, there's just only so many boys at these tournaments, and I feel definitely the need to give them encouragement and encourage them to stick with it, and give them a lot of confidence too, and also just show them how hard to call myself a professional player, but an older, somewhat more experienced
strong
player.
Amateur player, right? Probably
yes,
strong amateur player. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's more like it. Like behaves at a tournament, and how the etiquette goes and things when the kids are at some of my tournaments too. So yeah, I think the educator, and then the fun, like entertaining content creator, and then maybe a bit of a role model as well.
Mm-hmm. And do you think about, let's say, organizing the events over the board? So like helping with the simuls, maybe giving the simuls, maybe, let's say, supporting the, community with the, let's say, collaboration with kindergarten, some kind of, let's say, municipal city centers, maybe this kind of, let's say, activity, or something like more oriented into the local chess club, into maybe the university that you may have the contact, or maybe some like online content creation on YouTube, and YouTube with the opportunity exists, then you are just going some more collaborations. What about that?
Yeah, I think especially in my community, I've definitely been more involved in the children's things. So like I said, the chess club, at the library, that's been very like kid oriented, and I've had a job where I worked with kids in the past, and so it's very comes very naturally to me to like sit down and have fun with kids and kind of explain the game and maybe encourage them to stick with it. Through that, and also through helping run some tournaments. That's kind of been the extent of it in my own community, and it's kind of funny because I have a friend whose kids have tried to watch my videos, and they're younger kids, to be fair, but they apparently are not very interested in the videos because they're a little bit boring, mm-hmm. which is fair. I think my videos are kind of aimed at a little bit more of a mature audience than like kindergartners, but yeah, I think helping with the kids, especially in my community, has been a big role of mine so far, and I hope to continue to help out with that mm-hmm. in the future, organizing tournaments and directing and so on with that.
Mm-hmm. If I can give you a little bit of pieces of advice, if I may, that will be probably very impressive and helpful if you just establish yourself as a chess content creator, because this way people will be talking about in a positive way. And talking about your positive way will remove most of the example, not all, but most of the examples of the, let's say, technical nature. For example, why such person should teach our kids if she doesn't know nothing about chess? No, she's 2000 rating, she can beat 99% of players. At the same time, she is a content creator, she has the collaboration with Thinker Teacher right now. At the same time, she is having any other activities, like, let's say, collaboration with, let's say, strong players, with municipal center and so on. And then if you put this into the, let's say, website or curriculum vitae, and you are just having way higher chances to be welcomed by any other, let's say, communities, organization, and so on. And at the same time,
Yes.
I was there, let's say, back then a little bit, because I used to be a club chess coach at my, let's say, Elka City. At the same time, I give a little bit of, let's say, help related to the Simus and this type of organizing tournaments. I used to be the chess arbiter, and therefore, that's what I mean, that if you establish yourself as the community with the person that is supportive, that makes the changes, it is a way helpful to be contacted by others without less doubts. That's what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a huge part of it, is just, yeah, making these connections, like, exactly, connecting with you, connecting with other content creators, and then also within the community. It's a very good thing to establish these. It's all about networking, and with chess, I think it's fun to talk to other chess people, both in my community and around the world. So I'm excited to keep making these connections for sure.
Excellent, thank you very much. Our friend from Lithuania, our friend DJ Solo, is asking the question for you. After you become 2000, don't you feel you sacrifice too much of other life stuff? Or are you happy enough and now it is your new life that you are satisfied with and are happy?
That's a very good question. I think it was definitely a challenge, especially like just in my social life, because when I was, really grinding the most was pretty quickly after I graduated college. So a lot of my friends were like moving away. I went to college in my hometown, so I've still been here the whole time, but people are moving around and it's hard to find connections. But I generally feel pretty happy, and I think the most satisfying thing is when I can go to a tournament and perform really well. I think like winning good games really makes it worth it. And obviously I have continued to like maintain a social life and maintain connections with my family and everything, and various other interests that I have. So it's definitely about keeping the balance, but of course it is a little bit of an obsession. So I do sometimes.
Thank you very much for pointing this out. Finally pointing this out.
Yes, of course
because,
it is.
Sorry about interruption, because I'm the proponent of, let's say, enjoying chess, working hard to reach the goal, but I always warn any of my viewers, any of my community, not to set up unrealistic goals. Many of them are setting the unrealistic goal. I want to become FIDE master in a year. What's your rating? 800. It's impossible, right? I want to become a FIDE master. What's the rating? 1600. How old are you? 60. It's impossible. Sorry, you need to make realistic goals. And as you just mentioned, that it seems a little bit of obsession. I would say healthy obsession, right? Because there will be negative as well. Healthy obsession, dedication, perseverance, and you're, let's say, being very smart about the feedback, what I mentioned many times. And therefore, if you will be if you were my student, I would immediately recognize that you are pretty different than others. I would of course give you more challenging studies, ask you about, let's say, different type of models of thinking and so on. But it seems like that you must be at least a little bit, I would say in a quotation mark, crazy to achieve such a goal in such a short span. Because 2 years and 2000 is super impressive. By the way, I do not want to make you a little bit flattered, because I needed 23 years to achieve 2000. Therefore, you have the comparison, right?
Sure.
But anyway, you must be a little bit of obsessive, a little bit, or maybe a way more, let's say, perseverant. As you just mentioned, patient, probably a different name for being perseverance at the same time. And then, if you are working very efficiently, doing your best, you can get into the goal you just reached, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think efficiency is a really good word, because it's like you can put multiple hours in a day, but if you're not spending that time in the most efficient way, then you're not going to be improving a lot, and then you might actually be sacrificing a lot of other things in your life. So yeah, I put in my hours, like especially in the evening where I wouldn't be doing something else anyway. It's like when I was in school, I would be spending time doing homework. So that's kind of how I fit it in. And then, yeah, just trying to make the most efficient use of that time, so that it wouldn't start to eat into my other hours where I'm like, working or, interacting with other people.
Okay, thank you very much. And another question, because we just put into the who are you in the chess community, you just provided the description, but I will just raise the bar a little bit more, because I know you are pretty much challenging and goal-oriented driven person. Therefore, we are just raising the bar a little bit. Is that okay?
Sure. Yep.
What is your mission, I would even say vision, in a chess community, and what would you like to achieve in about 3, 5 or 10 years from now? If you just make your dreams come true, what would it be and why, the most important?
Yeah, that's
That's
it's funny to say.
unexpected.
Well, it's funny to think like 3 years out, because that'll be more than doubling the time I've already spent in chess. But I think mainly at this point, especially with my content, I just want to build a like good solid library of content that I can, point back to in various other endeavors I'm going to be involved in over the next 3-5 years. Also, like, just building a positive community, which I think, just from what I've seen, I think your community is very positive and like learning oriented. So I think a similar vibe to that would be fantastic. Just and that has been the case so far. So many of the comments are very positive, and people are helping each other out in the comments when they ask questions if I can't get to it. So I mean, that's kind of a goal that's already been achieved, but I'd like to continue to grow the community, of course. Kind of going with that, like connecting to other players and other content creators. And this, I mean, I'm just getting started, so I've got really high hopes of connecting with folks all over the world, which, like, this is a great example of, hopping on a stream like this. And yeah, just making those more connections and potentially like getting lessons from stronger players, and collaborating with them in various ways as I continue to grow. I would personally also like to start traveling a little bit more for over-the-board tournaments, because there aren't too many in my area. And unfortunately, I live in Midwestern United States, so I've got to drive, 6-8 hours to get to a big city where I can play in a decent-sized tournament. But I would like to do that a little bit more in the next couple of years and get my rating up and potentially go for a title. And then I think probably the biggest long-term goal is I would like to write a book. I've been a writer pretty much as long as I can remember, and right now I'm going to grad school for creative writing. And I think there's kind of a lack of books out there about chess players. So I kind of have a vision in my mind, like a modern chess player. Obviously, there's a lot of fiction specifically. There's a lot of nonfiction about, the great players of the past, but I would really like to see just like a middle school girl who goes to, play chess, and it's just like a fun time. And I think it kind of reflects the state of where kids are with chess right now. It's not so much of a nerdy activity and kind of taboo. It's much more mainstream at this moment in our, best world. And so, yeah, I think that's kind of the main goal. And so a lot of my other connections are kind of going to be helping me to be able to eventually pitch that book. I've also gotten the suggestion of like maybe writing more of an instructional book of my like 0 to 2000 journey. So that's also maybe a possibility. But yeah, using the channel especially as kind of a launch point to getting a book published would be fantastic.
Okay, thank you very much. And by the way, if I can give you a piece of advice again, because I know that you will become very popular, and then you'll say, Thinker Teacher gave me this idea, therefore I just make the advertisement for me.
Absolutely.
You can contact Jennifer Shahade. Probably you may know about her, or
I already have been in contact with her. She's fantastic.
Yeah, because she's in the chess community, especially she's, let's say, trying to put the women, let's say, players, women content creators, women promoters into the spotlight. And at the same time, she has a very broad experience about all of these activities in the chess world. And at the same time, she can give you, let's say, the access for, let's say, many people who have the contacts about the publishers, about the designers, about, let's say, people who can support your growth. And at the same time, the other person, of course, with the top tier, if I can say that, is Susan Polgar. You probably know her already as well, right? And therefore, if you get into this, let's say, ladder step by step and contact more people, will be establish your, let's say, person and establish your activity at chess community, I guess you will be pretty quickly, let's say, having the invitation either online, either on the board, into the, let's say, simuls, into the commentary, into all of the stuff, and quickly you can get into the community with so many opportunities that you'll just, let's say, explode with all of the ideas. And at the same time, the other question a little bit to your goals as well. Do you know about the chess community, let's say, women who just make the, let's say, explosions, of like Bottas sisters? Do you recognize them?
Oh yeah, of course.
Because, for example, Botter sisters, and for example, recently Dina Belenkaya, one of the, let's say, women who are just ruling the chess community with the, let's say, pretty interesting events. They are just making the big change, and at the same time, I guess if you just make the contacts, there will be a lot of stuff to be done, especially as you are a creative and hardworking person.
Yeah, absolutely. Those two especially are on my list of collabs I'd like to have. There's so many great women chess content creators. Anna Kramling's another one. There's Anna Rudolph. Yeah, so there's a lot of great great ladies in the chess community that I'd love to get in contact with. Susan Polgar, when I put out my tweet of like, oh, I reached 2,000, she was one of the folks who I was really excited, commented and congratulated me on my achievement, and I was very much starstruck by that. She's fantastic. I love her.
Therefore, I guess it would be great if you just contacted some of the, let's say, personalities that are established already, and if you ask about the help support, I guess they will help you as well. And another question from our friend Marcin Hoshno Warrior is the question about being a little bit more into the recognition, and she asked the question the following way: wouldn't it be a little bit better if you start making YouTube shorts and TikTok nowadays, because probably it would trigger the algorithms a little bit more efficient? What do you think about this?
Yeah, I'm planning to start doing more shorts. I think I'm like, not to discourage people from watching them, but I think I'm going to be reusing some of my past content that I've created. For example, I had a video on like basic checkmates, so I think that'd be good to just put into a short. My plan, and don't quote me on this, but I'm probably going to start releasing shorts on Tuesdays, and then my normal video release day will be on Thursdays. Yeah, because I have heard it's a huge algorithm boost just to get your name out there a little bit more and get more people, get more eyes, on your video. So yeah, that's kind of the plan. I don't think I'm going to play around with TikTok. I don't really use it on my personal time either, but I think the shorts will kind of, have that same effect as far as audience growth. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. And in the meantime, we just discussed many times about some of the stuff that you used about getting into 2000. And now let's talk a little bit about chess resources, especially books, courses, interactive lessons, puzzles, videos, stream podcasts, and all of the other stuff. Which ones do you use? Especially do you use regularly, or have you used to use? And which one would you like to recommend?
Yeah, I was gonna make a big stack of my books that I could show, but I guess I can just list them off. I don't have a lot of chess books on my bookshelf right now, but the ones that I use and like would for sure recommend and have been really helpful for me. So for my beginner students, I use the Peter Giannotto's Everyone's First Chess Workbook. It's just big workbook of tactics. And then I've also recently started using Coach Jay's Chess Academy, which is a series of books. I think it's kind of similar to the Chess Steps series, where it starts with the first book being very beginner, and then it moves up to the more advanced books, and it's organized kind of like the karate belt system. So it's fun, or illustrations, kind of aimed at kids, but I've also kind of found the usefulness of the later books. I've been going through some of the puzzles just for myself. So I think there's something for everybody in that series. At the intermediate level, I started working through the 100 Endgames You Must Know, and then also Best Lessons of a Chess Coach. That I can't remember the author on that one, but that one
Salih Rudimentary.
That's right.
And Edward Eusebi.
That's right. Yes. Yeah, that was a really good one. Recently, I've started going through this book, Test Your Positional Play, and I don't actually have it because I got like the first 10 pages as a photocopy from somebody at my club because he thought it would be useful for me. And so I think I'm just going to order that book because it was really helpful. It's more on like middle game positions and longer term ideas, which is kind of what I need to work on in like my personal growth right now. As far as like more online resources, there's a website that a lot of people asked about in my first video, where it's just like a long list of tactics with like links to the descriptions of them. That's called chessfox.com. That's a really good resource. It also has like a 10-day chess challenge, which I've done, and that was really nice as well. I've used some like Chessable courses, especially the like short and sweet ones when I'm like kind of fishing around for a new opening. Those are really good starting places. There's some like lessons on chess.com. The one I'm going through right now is the Pawn Structures lesson series by Grandmaster Johanna Hellsten. That's been really good. I think not having a coach, probably one of the downsides is that I missed out on a lot of like very basic concepts when I was first starting out, such as pawn structures. I didn't really start to realize the importance of different plans based on the pawn structure until quite embarrassingly recently. So that lesson has been really useful. And then there's plenty of other like content creators out there. The one that I'll like say I've been the most watching the most of his videos recently is Grandmaster Nerditsky. He's been putting out some great ones on like pawn endgames, king pawn endgames, and they're kind of like longer lectures. I'm sure you've probably seen them, and then some opening studies as well. And then of course like the speedrun games are very entertaining and instructive as well. But like I said, there's plenty of content creators that are out there that can fit a lot of people's needs.
Okay, thank you very much. You just mentioned most of the stuff that I could, let's say, put on the list on the chat. Therefore, some of this, guys, is on the chat if you are interested. And at the same time, there is another question from our community member, this time from our friend Wesley. As Wesley asks, what would you say about your three most important things to work on or to help to improvement to 2000? For example, openings, tactics, endgames, books, longer over games, YouTube, chessable, and so on. Three, the most important things to help you to get into 2000.
Yeah, that's a great one. I think probably the number one that kind of covers like a lot of those bases is like analyzing your games and verbalizing your mistakes and weaknesses. So like I mentioned earlier, I made that document called Why I'm Losing, where I go through and look through my games and just basically write down a bunch of data on like the different mistakes I happen to be making and seeing which ones come up the most. And so then I know exactly what I need to work on. And that might be different for every person. Maybe you're really good in the opening, but you're kind of struggling later in the end game, for example. So then you can kind of decide for yourself what specific weakness you need to improve on. I think another one that kind of like spans across everybody is tactics, which everybody says that, of course, but I've really found like Puzzle Rush to be super helpful in, as somebody who learned chess fairly recently and hasn't grown up seeing these different patterns and things. I use Puzzle Rush still every day to really drill in the really basic patterns because they're not something I learned to see intuitively as a kid. And so that particular feature has helped me a lot with tactics. But then also on the other side, you have to do the longer calculation puzzles as well, the harder ones, to train your long-term calculation. And then a third thing, probably, I can't decide between openings and endgames. I might go with openings because I think, although a lot of people talk about them, I think they are kind of underrated by stronger players, saying that you don't need to learn an opening until you're 1200. And I think what they really mean is that you don't need to go 18 moves into an opening of the very different branches until you're a stronger player. But I think like trying different openings and getting experience in different positions is really good, especially for players like under 1500. It was really helpful for me, at least. And then being able to narrow down your repertoire and get deeper into the lines, I think those are probably my three, I would say.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll just try to put the stuff that you mentioned just briefly in the bullet points. And another question is from our friend Chess Grinding. Do you use Puzzle Rush Survivor or Survive or Puzzle Rush 3 minutes, 5 minutes? Which one do you use?
So I use the 3-minute one, and it's a bit of a sore subject with people because I think the survival is good in its own right, but the problem I found with survival is you have to go through so many of the lower rated puzzles to get there that often like keeping the streak is really hard and then you have to start over again. Whereas with the 3-minute ones, you're just blitzing out moves. You often are playing the first check that you see, which can be like a bad habit to get into, but for me it was a good habit to get into because I wasn't doing the checks, captures, attacks, like checklist as I was kind of a newer player. So again, like seeing those patterns as quickly as possible has really helped me, again, as somebody who gets into time trouble a lot, to see potential patterns a lot faster, and then to be able to at least consider them when I'm playing like even a longer game, to at least consider the potential tactics. But I also do use the I think the rated puzzles, and there's also features on chess.com and I think Chess too, where you can set like the specific kind or the specific theme that you want to work on. So for example, I think right now all my boxes are checked with endgame things because I wanted to work on, rook endgames and pawn endgames because that's where I was kind of struggling the most with seeing certain kinds of tactics or ideas. So there has to be a balance of both, but when I do Puzzle Rush, I tend to do the 3-minute one. Although I did recently get a score above 50 for the first time on Puzzle Rush Survivor, so I was pretty happy with that.
Okay, thank you very much. And another stuff I'd like to make, this time a little bit different style, just for a while to make you a little bit, let's say, having a break, would be some kind of bullet questions. But bullet question, not just yes or no, but some like yes and no, with, let's say, 1 or maximum 2 sentences for the backup. Is that okay?
Sure, yep.
Take notice that some of the questions may be a little bit, let's say, making you uncomfortable, but in a way they are serious. Is that okay?
Okay, yes,
The first
I'm ready.
one. The first one. Are you addicted to chess?
Yes, a little bit, but I think it's okay, and it's helped me get where I am. There's so much more I could say, but I'll keep it short. Yes,
Okay.
I'm addicted.
Okay, next one. Are you obsessed about chess? Not addicted, but obsessed.
I think also yes, and I think. Okay, this might be longer than one sentence,
Yeah,
but
go on. Go on.
When I first started, especially, I think when I saw that I was really obsessed was, I don't know if you've heard of the Tetris effect.
Yeah.
Where, people like see the falling blocks of Tetris like in their everyday life, just like in random objects. I started to do that with chess. And so I would see like a random object kind of on a somewhat grid like item and see like, oh, if this was a knight, it could go here. If this was a bishop, it could go here. Yeah. So I think that's where I realized I had an obsession.
And probably it is the reference, if I'm not mistaken, with the Queen's Gambit character that she was lying on the bed and visualizing on the ceiling. Is that correct?
Yes,
that you
it
make
actually is very similar.
something similar, maybe not just at night, but some like you're just analyzing the stuff of chess nature, or some like the grid of chess into the normal activities, and all over time, at the back of your mind, you're making the analysis. What would happen if I play different way? What happens if there would be more pieces, less pieces, and so on? Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's why I told you that I recognized you immediately, that you must be a special person. Therefore, don't worry, I can do it pretty quickly. Another one is pretty similar. Therefore, take notice if some of the questions requires, some of the answers actually requires to make a little bit longer, let's say, answer. Feel free to extend it, okay?
Sure.
Are you fascinated by chess? Fascinated.
Yeah, I think I definitely am, and I think the better I get at chess, the more I realize that there's just so much more that I don't know, and I think that fact alone is very fascinating, because I think as a beginner you start off and you think there's a point you get where you'll just know everything about chess, and then the better you get, the more you realize there's just this huge depth of knowledge that probably nobody in their lifetime can achieve. Of all the chess things. So yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Another one, this time from our friend DJ Solo, but you must specify one answer, this one or the other. Would you rather live without over the board or without online chess?
Ooh, that's a hard one.
Yeah, our audience sometimes gives a very hard nuts to crack.
That's a very hard one. You rather.
Yeah.
I think I would have to go with. I could live without online chess. I think the community I found with over the board chess has been just so crucial and instrumental that the connections I've made, I do not think I could give those up. And it makes chess feel so much more real. That if I had to choose, I would give up the online chess.
Okay, excellent. And now all of these questions combined like a summary, and you can extend the answer as much as you wish. How to recognize if we cross the line and chess is taking control over us? Can you make some like your own assessment? Maybe friends on the party say, Kamryn, we want to make a party, not talk about chess analysis of the recent game. Just dance with others and talk not about chess, please.
It's like you've been at the parties I've been to.
Yeah. That's why I'm giving a little bit of, let's say, provocation, but I guess you know what I mean, right? How to recognize if we cross the line and chess is taking control over us.
Yes, I think there are points where I've crossed the line, and I think it comes most when it starts to interfere with daily life. Like when I was still in school and I would be, between classes or even like during classes, like sneaking under or like drawing the chess like in my notebook, not chess itself, drawing a chessboard in my notebook. I think when it starts to bleed into daily life is when you can kind of realize that you might have a bit of an obsession. And I think as I've gone on, it's just become so much more a part of my life that it feels a lot more natural. But when I feel that it's crossing some kind of line, I think is kind of similar to what I mentioned earlier, where you start to have these very intense emotional reactions, especially to losing games, where you start to go on like a losing streak and it becomes a lot less fun. I think when you lose the fun in what's supposed to be a game, I think that's when it becomes kind of a problem. And so I think I've gotten pretty good about being able to step away, especially when I'm, on a losing streak, when I'm playing online. Step away, use the restroom, have a snack, and then come back and maybe analyze the games or just, do some other activity to to get myself away from that bad spiral, and make chess fun again. Because at the end of the day, it is just a game, and people may see it as a little bit more than that, but I think it's good to look at it in the larger perspective of life.
Absolutely, very good point. And by the way, in the meantime, it seems like, because I'm analyzing all of the stuff you're trying to share, that probably you have very great ability to make the distance between the stuff you do and yourself as a person. And it is a very unique skill, by the way, at chess as well, because this way, even if the, let's say, losses are painful, you can see the losses as the perspective of the vehicle that you want to get into the specific point on the journey. Not about, let's say, the obstacles that makes your life ruined, but rather about a little bit of, let's say, pause, that you need to pause and make, let's say, a car pretty much repaired, and then you are going forward. What about that?
Yeah, I think that's something I've definitely had to develop, especially because, losing is so hard. It hurts a lot, especially in the moment. But I've become a lot better, I think, just with experience of being able to deal with that head on in the moment and then come back to it later with a much more objective lens and actually use that loss and learn from my mistakes and learn from everything that I did wrong. And just take kind of all the emotion out of it and look at it with a fresh and objective perspective. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. And another question from our chat. One of the viewers asked about where do you play? Do you play at either chesscom or lichess? And which one do you like playing more? Which of the website? Because they are the most popular one. Chesscom or lichess? Or maybe both? And which one do you like more?
Yeah, I think they both have things that I use. I play games on chess.com and there's really no reason. I think there's a lot of people that just will die on the hill of whichever one is their favorite. But I really just like the way it looks the best. So it's really as simple as that. But I do use lichess for other things like studies, and they have some good puzzle resources too. So I use them a little bit of both, but I primarily will play on chess.com. I think my lichess account only has 3 or 4 games on it, and they're all from simul's. So there's not too many games on my account. Okay,
therefore, if anybody is preparing to outplay you in the overboard tournament, if he is looking at the games of lichess, probably it's not going to be fruitful.
Yeah, probably not.
Okay, excellent.
There's not enough for it to be fruitful.
Yeah, got it. And another one, we just talked about all of the stuff, and now make a little bit of summary because we are striving to the end, probably in 10-15 minutes. Is that okay?
Yep.
Now let's get into practice makes perfect, because many times it's the motto that people are repeating, practice makes perfect. What were your milestones in your chess progress, and what were the most difficult problems and challenges you faced, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, I think as far as rating milestones, the main as far as that I remember is reaching 1200, because that's as far as I thought I would ever be able to go, and then I just kind of kept going. And then 1500 was a really big one, because that's kind of where I started to set my longer term goals, and various other things in my life were changing around that time, but I became much more serious about chess around 1500. And then of course 2000 was a major milestone. I think other milestones would be just the way I've gotten involved in my local chess community. So first of all, just getting up the courage to actually go to a club, playing in my first tournament, traveling out of town for my first tournament, getting my first big win over the top seeded player at the tournament. Things like that have been really cool milestones. But as far as challenges, I think they've maybe been a little less something that I could put on a timeline. I think it's more things that have kind of been challenges that have been ongoing since I've started playing. So for example, leaving my ego at the door when I'm playing in a tournament. My first ever one, I lost to a kid, And I was like, all right, this is embarrassing, but
if I lose to kid, I must go and never come back.
Yeah, that's kind of how I felt. It was one of the early rounds too. I was like, oh my gosh, this is awful.
Yeah.
But I mean, you eventually just kind of have to learn that, people at different ages are different skill levels, and you're playing the board, not the opponent. So that's been a challenge to overcome, of course. And I think most of the challenges I've had come from like over the board. So like dealing with the distractions of playing with other people in the room, or people gathered around your board, and there's a lot of pressure there. So I've overcome that just kind of naturally by being able to kind of put the horse blinders on and not pay attention to what's going on around me. Sometimes like to a fault, where there was a tournament, I think about a month ago, where a family member of mine happened to be walking by, because they take place in like a mall, and he stood probably about 10 feet away from me as I was in the middle of a game. And I was like facing him too, but I was so invested in the game that I didn't see him, and he managed to take a picture of me and stand there for like 5 minutes, and I never noticed him the whole time he was there.
Wow.
And then we had a family gathering a couple of days later, and he showed me the picture, and I was like, oh my gosh, I need to have some more situational awareness.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it is a good thing to kind of be able to get into that flow and focus a little bit more. And then, yeah, I think the other like problem or challenge would just be like long plateaus and like losing streaks. I think those are the most challenging to overcome mentally, because it doesn't feel good.
What do you tell to her if you have the, let's say, losing, let's say, streak, and at the same time you have some like the rating that was going down at the same time? What did you tell to yourself? So I'm like, okay, never give up, try harder, accept it's going to away, or maybe change the style, or maybe consult psychologists, consult the trainer, consult the coach. What did you, how did you overcome? I mean, the most painful for you?
Yeah, it was a lot of just distancing myself, I think, from the emotions of it, and not letting myself get really like angry or upset or sad about it. I mean, we all have those days where a certain loss is just really painful. But then I think just even just like writing things down, like especially when I'm playing online, I have like a sticky note next to me a lot of times that just has like something that just says like patience, or like look for their threats, or just like very simple things like that. Obviously I'm not like writing down lines or anything, but just giving myself these physical reminders of like, okay, you just need to be patient. You can't get all in your head about who you're playing, or whether you're gonna win this game that you're actually winning, or whether you're gonna lose in a lost position. You got to keep fighting. So just like little motivational things like that to do a lot of self-talk to myself, and work through the most difficult things internally, I think. Yeah.
Okay, another question from our friend Kilka is about women play chess, women playing chess professionally. What do you think about the tournaments and activities directly, let's say, created for women? For example, if we have the women tournaments, women prizes, all of these activities just for women, is it a good idea, or maybe it shouldn't be any gender, just make the tournament without any division? What do you think about it? Do you have any opinion on that?
Yeah, so I think that's so hard for me, having not been super involved in the community for a very long time. And in my state, I've never been to a like women's or girls only tournament, because there's like 4 of us in North Dakota that actively play. But I think from what I understand, the women's only tournaments are a lot about building like a community, and I think that's really helpful, just to have some safety, because there are some creepy weirdos out there, and sometimes they come to chess tournaments, and I think especially for women who have experienced that, I think it's good to just be able to be surrounded by very supportive women who are all there just to have fun and play their game. I think where maybe the like women's only thing is ready to be phased out is the women's only titles. I think there was probably a good motivation to start those in the beginning, but I think it kind of tells women that, okay, a women grandmaster is 200 points less than a grandmaster. Like, why can't I just be a grandmaster? Why? I think it tells women that their skill that they're able to achieve at the highest level is 200 points, lower than what a man could achieve. So I think those are probably ready to be phased out in the near future. But I think the women's only tournaments and events like that are really just to build community. So I would definitely like see those continuing at least for a while while there is such a minority of women in the chess community.
And by the way, if I understood correctly, it would be better, correct me if I'm wrong, of course, it would be better to focus about supporting women instead of focusing over some kind of details that we cannot change. For example, women FIDE master and FIDE master, right? FIDE masters are for the players who are male. For example, there was some discussion, sometimes it's ridiculous, but I show absurdity. For example, as far as I know, maybe I mean wrong, but as far as I know, if you are a male, you cannot reach the female titles, but if you are a female,
right,
you can reach the FIDE titles and so-called male titles. They are nowadays called open, right? And there's some kind of lack of coherency, I guess, but if I'm not mistaken, it would be a way better to support women the best way they expect it and they need, instead of dwelling about is it this title better on the other, maybe to put the titles without, let's say, any relevance and so on. What about that?
Yeah, I think that's a good point too, and I think especially from like the outside world's perspective, it kind of gives the impression that women and men like always play in separate tournaments, and that women, like, kind of like sports where, you know, women's physical bodies tend to be better suited or less suited for certain sports, or, you know, whatever it happens to be.
Yeah.
But I think in chess, like, you're sitting there and we all have the same mental capacities, and women can definitely achieve the same heights as men. I mean, look at the Polgar sisters, great example. And Susan Polgar never went for women's titles. She always wanted to go for the men's titles and play in open tournaments and things like that. And that's kind of the mindset that I have going forward. It's like, well, if I'm going to go for something, let's really go for it. Let's go all the way. And so, yeah, I think, like you said, just supporting women and encouraging more girls to stick with it in whatever way possible. I think that should be the main focus, yeah, instead of getting caught down in the details.
Okay, thank you very much. And next question that we'll be having pretty close to an end, but just two more, so like a little bit bigger, but I guess we'll be going through pretty quickly. Your YouTube channel and your videos. What are you going to do and what are your plans? Are you interested in becoming a chess streamer and in chess streamer at some point? For example, if I establish myself, let's say after 1 or 2 years, maybe I'll consider to become a chess streamer, but especially about your plans, about YouTube, let's say the next 6 months, maybe a year. What are you going to, let's say, do? What kind of, let's say, content are you going to create? And maybe there is something like the surprise that you would like to tell us as well.
Sure. Yeah, I think my main goal with the YouTube channel is just to create content that I would have liked to have in the last year or two, and like explained in the ways that I found the most helpful. So, you know, I just, as somebody who's very recently gone through this massive rating gain, just knowing the different questions that people have at different levels and the different kinds of videos that would be really helpful. One example of that is like middle game videos, where I'm going to be going through like specific terms that people talk about a lot in the middle game but don't really explain to the fullest extent. I think that's kind of going to be my main thing, or not my main thing, but one of the series that I'm going to be working on in the next couple months. And then, yeah, I've got a huge list of just like various things that will come up. I don't necessarily know if I want to go into like specific openings, although people have been kind of asking for that. I don't feel like I have the knowledge except for maybe 1 or 2 openings that I'd be willing to make an entire video about. But just making it fun and kind of bite-sized, where you can watch it on your lunch break, and as instructional as possible. Some kind of a library that people can kind of refer to, I think. As far as streaming, yeah, like I said, I think I haven't decided on a number yet, but I think when I reach a certain subscriber number on YouTube is when I'll probably start streaming. I don't know if that's like 20,000 or 50,000 or whatever it happens to be, when I feel like I'm ready. And it also is going to depend on my schedule and how I'm able to hopefully cut down on the time it takes for me to make a video, because right now it's taking a lot of hours to make one single video for the week, just with the recording and prepping and editing and all that. So yeah, I think when it fits into my schedule is when the streaming thing will actually happen, but I would like to do that because I think it will give me more opportunities to connect with other creators and streamers.
Got it.
And build the community out that way. Yeah, I think, yeah, the main focus will be on making just the best YouTube content that I can. And like I said, just things I wish I would have been able to access as a beginner or intermediate player.
Excellent. Therefore, you, if I understood correctly, you want to create some kind of chess library that if anybody would like to replicate your success, that will be having the resources that were helpful along the journey that you didn't have the direct access. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's kind of something I maybe should have mentioned a little more clearly, is like a lot of the videos I'm creating are like the specific parts of the study process that have helped me. So for example, the why I'm losing document, or like my specific study schedule for the day, those have each been made their own videos. So yeah, specific things that have helped me along the journey, and hopefully will help other people too.
Yeah, we are keeping fingers crossed. And by the way, there is one comment, not the only one, but one of the comments, if I can read for you, that probably will make you happy. Are you ready?
Yes.
One of our members says, I'm just quoting, "I have really enjoyed her YouTube content. I believe she's going somewhere, great personality, and seems like she has great goals and motives."
Thank you so much. Yeah, that means so much to me. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, therefore we are super happy that you are with us together with chess community, and therefore we are super grateful because you just started in a, let's say, explosion about this, let's say, the 200,000 views video. It is actually a masterpiece. Therefore, I'm fully with you. And the last part of, let's say, questions that I would like to discuss with you is what are the ways to support you and your chess activity, and what kind of contact do you prefer the most? If somebody is, for example, interested in collaboration with you, like Thinker Teacher did.
Yes. So yeah, the main way that random person can support me is just subscribing to the YouTube channel. You can also follow me on Twitter, which is @KamrynHeidi. And then in the description of all my videos, I have my business email in there, which I do get a lot of messages there and on my chess.com account, so I can't respond to everybody. But yeah, that's probably the best way to get a hold of me, or like I said, on Twitter too.
And what about the other ways of supporting you? For example, if somebody would like to make a collaboration with you, what kind of, let's say, requirements are there? For example, what do we expect? What do you like to present? Some like a little bit more, if you can.
Sure. I don't think there's anything specific. Like I totally like down to appear on like streams and interviews. I've done a couple of podcasts. But yeah, I think it's, as long as it's just like a professional and generally like positive environment, I really like to just keep everything positive, keep the drama out, and it just, good vibes only, very instructional type content, or just something fun. But yeah, again, just avoiding all of the drama that can happen in the chess world, just keeping everything very positive and happy.
Okay, thank you very much. And therefore we have all of this stuff, the biggest, let's say, ones that we planned for today's meeting done. And in a moment, I would like to ask you about some kind of summary, because many times if you are just getting into the process, you are just pretty much focused, like some like the same as chess, right? That you mentioned that there was some members that were just looking at you, and you completely forgot that this member is just, let's say, staring at you as well. For example, to make the summary about today's meeting, for example, did you, let's say, feel well? Did you experience something important? Did you express everything what you wanted? Or maybe you would like to make some kind of corrections because I maybe misunderstood some of your parts, or maybe you would like to share something that I didn't ask. It's 3 minutes for you, if I can say.
Sure. Yeah, so I really enjoyed joining you here today. I think it's really great to talk about my journey from 0 to 2000, because I think that's kind of a lot of people's aim, is to get to that magic 2000 number. And just to kind of summarize, I did it in the last 2 years, and I started after learning, I learned how the pieces moved after the Queen's Gambit, after watching that series. And it just kind of became an obsession for me. And I've been through the highs and lows, and I've overcome that very much internally, mentally, with, a lot of patience and coming up with my own study schedule, having a lot of discipline. And I think in the future, like I said, I think my goals are going to be to, for my own personal goals with chess, I'm focusing a lot on I'm mixing them up. My own personal goals, I'm working towards my over-the-board rating, and potentially going for a title, and just generally, the things that I can control, which is playing the best I can at every over-the-board tournament I go to, playing in more classical tournaments, potentially traveling for them. And then my content goals, I should say, are collaborating with more people, making more connections, like with your amazing community, and just hopefully, spreading just positive vibes and good instructional content, kind of creating a library and sharing my joy and kind of obsession with the game with other people.
Excellent, thank you very much. And were there any questions or any, let's say, stuff that you would like to either correct, either extend that you wanted to say, but I interrupted you, for example, some like extending, some like continuing, and just saying something like, Thinker Teacher, please, I beg you to give me a little bit of time. I want to just add something.
No, I don't think so. I think you gave me plenty of time to cover everything I needed to. I think, yeah, it's so good to have these kinds of conversations, because it just, even in your questions, I'm learning a lot from you, and I'm just getting kind of an insight into your community as well, and the kinds of things that they're interested in. So I'm super glad we were able to make this connection. It's so cool to meet with different people all around the world. It's amazing the way that technology allows us to do this.
Yeah. In the meantime, I can give you a little bit of, let's say, maybe not hope, but support, that I'm going to put the video put the interview into the YouTube channel of mine. And therefore, if you would like to, let's say, put it into the Twitter, you can just put, let's say, the link, the interview, and people will recognize you even more. And I guess it will be easier for you to get more contacts with the people who are interested to make the collaboration with you.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds amazing. And yeah, I'm hoping to continue supporting you as well. And hopefully with, if I share it out on Twitter, hopefully you'll get some more viewers who might not know that, that your stream exists. And so hopefully it's kind of a two-way street here.
Yeah, I guess we'll be supporting each other. At the same time, I just started YouTube channel just at the end of the previous year. And now I am planning to put more instructional videos into the channel, because previous ones are the interviews. And probably in a week from now, I'll be on the Twitter and on the Instagram, because this way I want to be more recognizable and attract more, let's say, attention and viewers. And at the same time, I guess if the community will just tie it together, everybody, let's say, makes benefits out of it. What do you think?
Yes, that's awesome. I'm excited to continue to watch some of your stuff. I was glancing at a VOD from the other day where you're going over some endgame stuff, and I think I might end up just watching the entire VOD because it was really great content. So I'm excited to keep supporting you, and I'm, again, very glad we made this connection.
Yeah, thank you very much. And by the way, one more time, because I mentioned this a few times, but this needs to be, let's say, expressed the best way possible. I watched your videos, the recent ones that you just published as well, and I'm very impressed, because it is not about the level of yours that you possess. For example, if you possess the 2000, 2200, 400, but rather the explanation and the insight into the ideas that you provide. For example, you just gave some of the insight about the middle games, about some of the plans that even me was pretty impressed by that. And this is the let's say, skill that probably will give you pretty much recognition, and at the same time people who's going to support you, because this way you are giving a lot of insight into the specific ideas. At the same time, you do it some kind of with ease. Sometimes I know that it takes a lot of time to make it easy way, but from the receiver's standpoint, it's pretty impressive. What do you think about it?
Yes, thank you so much. I will give you a little secret, in that it may look easy because there's a lot of jump cuts, but yeah, those videos take like I think that one took over an hour to record and just like get all my thoughts in order and make sure I had everything ready to go. But yeah, I really do appreciate that. Thank you.
And therefore, I'm keeping fingers crossed about your development as the player, and especially about the contacts with chess community, because there are a lot of, let's say, people who'd like to support you. You are super positive, super professional. At the same time, you're supporting, let's say, the local community, the kids at the library. Therefore, I am keeping fingers crossed very much, and very, very grateful that you accepted the invitation. And in the meantime, that we could just discuss some of the stuff. What about that?
Excuse me. Yes, yeah, for sure. Did you want me to talk about that again and summarize?
No.
Or just...
I'd rather you to be aware that I really appreciate in our community, what you do in the community, especially your community over the board, and with the, let's say, local chess club and the kids you work with, because probably it's not just chess, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, for sure. Well, yeah, thanks so much. I mean, yeah, it's a huge, like, benefit, I think, of getting involved both in the over the board community and helping out kids and maybe inspiring them to keep playing, but then also, yeah, making more connections around the world and playing and collaborating with people who are I never would have known otherwise. It's all great. It's all good.
Okay, and then one more question for the end of the interview, because I want you to grow as much as possible, because you probably need some of the, let's say, feedback as well. One of friend that asked the question, our friend Gilga, says, you are really great and really awesome what you have achieved. It's nice to have you meet you, and the heart emoji at the end.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for accepting the invitation. And if you just realized that 2 hours passed by, you are correct.
Yeah, well, it's like playing a bunch of Blitz games. It's like you don't even notice the time passing when you're talking about these topics. So
definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much one more time. Keep your fingers crossed. And we are just hoping to have more videos on your channel. We'll be watching them one by one, and we'll be discussing them as well.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thanks so much again for inviting me. I'm really glad to have popped in and kind of met you and met your community, and I hope we can continue to support each other in the future.
I guess so. I keep fingers crossed. Thank you very much one more time, and take care. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye. Thanks again.
Bye-bye.